Well, good evening. Light and darkness. It's a popular theme in poetry. It's a popular theme in theology. And it's a popular theme in contemporary music. Today, I want to remind you of a piece of scripture that we're not going to read, 1 John 1:5. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. No doubt these words were inspired by another prophetic poet, Isaiah. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has shined. And later on in the Gospel of John, it says, Jesus told the disciples, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Finally, in the letter of 1 John, which was probably written by a community that followed in John's footsteps, there is no fear in love, because perfect love casts out fear. So there's a reason why we're here tonight, not just because it's on Christmas Eve, not just because we're celebrating the birth of Jesus tomorrow. We're also here because it's 4 days after December 21st, which is the winter equinox, which is the shortest, coldest, and darkest day of the year. This last year, Ellen and I were privileged enough to tour England and Scotland. And one of the places I've always wanted to see is Stonehenge. You know, Stonehenge, the big circle of rocks. And one of the things that we discovered was that it's not just there that there's a big pile of circular rocks, but all over England and all over Scotland, there was a culture that created these stone circles. And these stone circles had a purpose. And that was to find out when December 21st was, the shortest day of the year. Because it was a marker for them when the days were going to get longer. It was a marker for them because they lived in an agricultural society, and it helped them to know what time it was and what kinds of things they ought to be and ought to be about. Now, the day that Jesus was born might have been the coldest, darkest day in her life. Now, wouldn't that have been the coldest, darkest day in your life if you were expecting and you were forced to travel a long distance to report to the government and pay them your taxes? You were mortgaging the farm, basically, to Rome. And while you were on that journey, you went into labor and you had no place to go. But from that deep place of darkness came a great joy. My sons, when they were growing up, they loved Nickelodeon. How many Nickelodeon had this great show on there. It was called Are You Afraid of the Dark? And it always had an episode of something bad that would happen to someone, and by the time you got done watching the episode, you were happy that you weren't them. You know, those kind of shows. But I guarantee you, if we were in pitch black here and we turned out all the lights like we will be doing, that you would be afraid. And we wonder things like, well, what if I stumble? Or what if I stub my toe? Or what if I trip over something? Or I lose my way? What if I run into someone? What if I can't find my belongings? What if I lose something? So when we lack eyes to see in a spiritual way, it is like stumbling in the dark. And Hebrews 11 says that faith is an assurance of things you hope for and a conviction of things that you cannot see. Light came into the world and the darkness cannot overcome it. One of the things that I like about John is when he uses the word world, it is actually the great Greek word cosmos. and it really means cosmos. It really means all of created order. And all of created order, as Martin Luther King said, is the moral arc of the universe. And that moral arc is long, but it bends toward justice. Now, Isaiah didn't say it's just darkness. He said it's deep darkness. And I have to admit that I'm a little bent when it comes to the darkness. In one way or another, every day, I look into the darkness, because that's usually where the people that I'm talking to are at. I could give you a weekly chronicle of the darkness and the unknowing that I have seen in this last week, but I can give you an edge on it. I see many times in people the darkness of loneliness. I see many people who live in a world of dark thoughts. Thoughts of anger, thoughts of fear, thoughts of self-doubt, thoughts of self-criticism. I see people look into the darkness, cancer, the darkness of an undiagnosed illness that they're afraid will recur. I see too many people who live in the darkness of homelessness, right here in Worcester. All of us live with the darkness of the loss of a loved one that is particularly painful at this time of year. I also see many people who live with the darkness of addiction. And no one escapes from the darkness. George Harrison even warned us, beware of darkness. And what I hope for you is that this service will give you a resource that reminds you that it is possible to find peace. It is possible to find love. It is possible, no matter what your circumstance, to find hope. And so this evening, of all evenings, has come for us to be a time when we have a different consciousness about ourselves. When we can look beyond our everyday lives and focus on hope and peace. Many churches in our community will hold services. They call it something like a blue Christmas. It's a time when people are going through a struggle and they don't feel like celebrating. And what I say to you today is that that first Christmas was a blue Christmas for a homeless family that was on the run, on the way to Bethlehem to give them all their money, kicked out, pushed into a stable. And the poor are always subject to indecencies that most of us cannot imagine. And to top it off, they are blamed for their situation. Poverty is tragedy, and poverty is trauma. Someone this last week said, well, there's a glimmer of hope. And a glimmer is still light, right? Even if you just have a glimmer. And sometimes people can make it on just a glimmer of light. And even a glimmer is enough. Now, I have an affinity for the Magi because I spent a large portion of my life outside at night trying to find a star. Have these big star charts, the round ones, you kind of hold them up, and kind of match them up to the sky. Do you ever do that? See the constellations, try to find the stars. But I found that most of my inability to find a certain star didn't have anything to do with the way my eyes work, or the telescope that I was using, or whatever tool it was that I was using to find a particular star. It mostly had to do with circumstances that were far beyond my control. It was either raining, or it was cloudy, or it was overcast, or someone in the neighborhood turned on a great big mercury light and bled out the whole sky. And most of those times of darkness in our life have nothing to do with our own eyes, what we've done. It's some circumstance that has clouded the horizon for us. And it always comes at a time when we need the light we want to see. And sometimes in life we can't see the stars. It's just the way it is. But you know what? Because we saw them once, we know where they are. And we know where they're located. And we know how to find them. And we know that even if in that moment we can't see the star, that it's still there. I just can't see it because of the circumstances. I don't have to tell any of you about the darkness. Because in one form or another, at one time or another, it has touched the lives of every person here. And you have been acquainted with that cloudy night. And so we can't come here today and celebrate Christmas and naively deny the existence of darkness, because that won't do the light justice. We won't truly celebrate that glimmer of hope that we have in the light of Christ. And nowhere in Scripture is there going to be a nice pep talk and an argument about things not really being as bad as they seem, and you'll get over it. Because all of our spiritual traditions teach that the darkness is real and it's present. So in a way, I want you to think of it this way too. I like to think of the Nativity this way. That Jesus coming into the world was a test. And it was a test to see if we could think about God as being vulnerable. You know, what if the reality of God is that not God does all these terrible things to people, and to hear someone talk about God, you'd think they were talking about the mafia sometimes. So what if we're the ones, like Mary, who have to nurture God's Spirit in the world? And through God's love, we help people to see. And Christmas causes us to look at Jesus' early years and ask, how do we treat the most vulnerable people around us? A baby reminds us that life is fragile, that God's Spirit is fragile in people. And we can see by the lighting of the candles today how fragile a candle is. And that's why we have them. That's why you're going to light one in a little bit. Because God's Spirit in you and God's Spirit in the world is fragile, just like the baby that was born. And you and I are called to be caretakers of the light in others. So there was this one man who changed the world, and we are all the better for it. In fact, now we see the world differently. And Jesus lived a pretty obscure life most of the time. He didn't travel too far. He ran into a lot of trouble because he tried to tell the truth. But he lived a great love. And that great love is the light that we have to live by. And the message of Christmas reminds us that he came to give us inspiration. And I hope that you're not afraid of the dark tonight. I hope you're not afraid of the dark. I hope you're not the fragile one. I hope you're not the lonely one. But stars appear and clouds can be pretty thick. And yet Jesus said, I am the light of the world. Got a glimpse tonight. We have a chance tonight to see where that star is. We have an opportunity tonight to change our consciousness and to think differently. So, I want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas. And may you see the light this evening. And may you know where to find it in your times of need. That's a great passage, John 1:5. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot